Alright, we are back with even more major coverage. We are getting into the thick of it as we are beginning the first stage of the Europe RMRs. We are starting in Group A, and we're doing things a little bit differently. At the time of recording, the RMRs are still very much in progress, but I decided to make a video roughly halfway through the event so we could split things up and avoid another 35-minute Goliath video on this channel, hopefully. So today we're going to be taking a look at all of the best of ones, some of the early storylines developing throughout the event, as well as bookending it with our first two sets of qualification matches, as well as our first two teams exiting the event stage left. So let's not waste any more time and go ahead and get started. So make sure you guys take a second and leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm, so thank you for doing it. Also, I have been able to co-stream all the European RMRs over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/LionHeartZ2. Come join me if you want to watch me react, lose my mind, talk shit, and enjoy watching all of the shenanigans throughout the major cycle together. Thank you to PGL for giving me that opportunity, and let's go ahead and start talking about these best of ones. So we open up festivities with NAVI taking on Fnatic. Obviously, everyone's going to have all eyes on NAVI throughout the duration of this event. Coming off the backs of that really pitiful performance at the Blast World Finals, everyone was curious to see how NAVI would bounce back with the extended break, giving their team some much needed rest after several months of intense competition. Obviously, they've been the best team all year, and we could of course be looking at the establishment of a NAVI era, the first of its kind in CS2 if they bookended it with yet another major win to end the year. Their opening matchup here against Fnatic, honestly, they were a bit slow to start, getting things going, kind of getting into the tempo of the event, but overall, NAVI felt very confident. They started off on the T side of Inferno, which has been one of their most vulnerable aspects over the last couple months of play, but here their T side looked pretty strong, pretty coordinated. The big thing to note about NAVI pretty much throughout the RMR so far is that everyone seems to be pulling their weight pretty equally. Bit, JL, Wonderful, Emma, all have had moments of insane impact. Generally speaking, you look at their score across most of their series, and everyone is putting in pretty much equal work. There hasn't been a necessity for a JL extreme carry or a Wonderful Wonder performance or Emma going really insane, and that's of course the standard NAVI formula. Their depth, their coordination, their teamwork is just unmatched anywhere else in the world right now, and it looks like they haven't lost a step. That break seems to have healed all ills, giving them a chance to reassess any flaws they might have had, and while there were some great moments out of Fnatic, BlameF continues to look really good, Nock had some choice moments. I was really impressed with Maddie's here and in other games as well. Fnatic just really aren't up to the task. Crims, while still a very valuable player, is not the same Crims of Legend, and it just feels like Fnatic really haven't hit the full rebuild button despite having some really great pieces around them. It's a roster that I'm really interested in, but beating NAVI would have been an extremely tall task anytime, even at their lowest in recent form, but NAVI look really strong to start. They take this victory and go up 1-0 in the system. Following that, we had other major favorites Vitality taking on the upstarts in GamerLegion, and this was once again on Inferno, and also a pretty straightforward affair. Vitality took care of work pretty neatly, 13-8. Credit to GamerLegion though, they're going to be an interesting team to follow throughout this event. They had a great opening half on the T side. Taking 6 rounds against this Vitality squad is definitely nothing to sneeze at. Overall, they looked pretty interesting as a roster. ZTR is definitely one of the best up-and-coming in-game leaders, and seeing him develop is going to be something to watch over the next year or so. And Flamus looks like he's on the cusp of becoming the next big star. I mean, really, this should shock nobody at this point. Russia just seems to crap out star riflers and oppers all the time, so Flamus being another young name trying to burst on the scene really doesn't surprise me. But he's looked really good, really confident in his maneuvers, looks very comfortable mechanically, the eye test looks very nice, and this GamerLegion team really just kind of gives me heroic vibes in the sense that there's a lot of cool young pieces, and it looks like they're getting ready to kind of put things together and start threatening to win some upsets. I mean, Slend is a great opper for what you're trying to establish here. Volt and Towson I'm not as familiar with, but I've actually liked some of their moments throughout the event so far. And again, ZTR looks like he's going to be leading that generation of new in-game leaders with names like Big Azera, Shuhei. He's young, he's not really wretched individually, and he's got a great mind for the game. For Vitality, I mean, this was definitely a game they weren't really feeling threatened on. Mezzi taking an event off doesn't seem to have slowed him down one bit. Zaibu looks in form early. I mean, it's Vitality. We know what to expect from them. If they can play to their strengths, they're going to be a threat to make a deep run here. And honestly, anything less than like a semifinals berth for them feels disappointing for how they've played lately. Next up, we had Mouz taking on Nemiga, also on Inferno, so we opened up the EU RMRs with 3 straight Inferno games. This was our first of many stomps throughout this event. Nemiga are just one of those teams that aren't going to threaten to do anything at the Major. I hate to be that guy, but the Major can't always be filled with competitive teams top to bottom. Some teams are going to come in that just aren't qualified to take on this field, and Mouz, despite their own issues, is still, like, at worst, a top 5 team in the world. So of course they took care of work. It was 13-3, not particularly close. Mouz look like they're really humming right now. We're talking about them more a lot later in their first qualification match, but here I think this is a great start to the tournament. You got great moments on Torji, Brolin, Jimfat, Zershin, Shuhi, still an excellent endgame leader, of course, one of the best in the world, and yeah, a pretty clean victory. I'm not surprised. And then we pull up to the first match that I was really anticipating to follow here, and that's FaZe Clan taking on Cloud9. Now obviously if you watched my hot takes video, which you should if you haven't already, I am putting a lot of money on Cloud9 to do something and surprise everybody at this Major, because I think there's a lot of really cool interesting aspects to this lineup, and the big thing is that Cloud9 haven't had a chance to play that many LAN tournaments since making these roster moves. At the end of the day, a lot of these guys like Bubblesj, like Icy, like Axile, these players are used to playing on LAN more than online, and I think you can see here, once we get to a LAN environment, you see a lot more promise than we saw in their online results. Heavy God looks like an incredible pickup. He's able to mold himself into what this team needs. Icy is having a breakout tournament so far individually, and Axile and Inters, while they still have their issues individually, have looked better and sharper, and I think Bubblesj is underrated in terms of his leadership abilities. Now all that is to say, they lost against FaZe here. Fair enough. However, some addendums to that. This was a great game out of Rain and a great game out of Brokey. You're not always going to get that. You're especially not always going to get such good impact from Kerrigan. Frozen and Rops were admittedly missing, but they really didn't need to show up. This was on Ancient. FaZe had a great opening half on their CT side. They had really good use of map control on the T side. I felt like Cloud9 were a bit slow going here. Icy definitely pops off further down the line as we get further into the tournament. But here, it was definitely like, you know, listen, FaZe, they're one of those teams that even at their worst, they're hard to take down. I don't really begrudge Cloud9 for losing here, and they go on to do much better work later in the bracket. So listen, the agenda is still alive. Cloud9 are winning the Major. Okay, listen, that was partly a joke, but I have to be the Cloud9 truther here because I like this lineup. After that, we have Saw taking on the Sinners. Sinners are an interesting lineup, mostly because they feature Oscar, who is one of the most veterans to ever veteran. 34 years old, still doing it, still honestly looks really competent with the op in his hands, but the rest of this team I'm personally not very familiar with. It's cool to see Oscar working domestically with his own countrymen. For Saw, they're in a weird spot because obviously their coach, Barry and Erasdas have recently departed, so they have Agile in as the new 5th as well as a new coach. So this is not the same Saw that had that great run at Cologne a few months back. But the big highlight for me still is that Stories and UJerks are incredible individual players. UJerks looks like someone who could be a potential top 20 player at some point in his career, so I still have a lot of faith seeing what Saw could possibly do in this kind of format. Unfortunately here, they fall short on Vertigo against the Sinners 13-11, a very close game coming down to the last couple of rounds. Both of these teams again feel very middle of the pack. I really don't expect either of them to do too much damage in a meaningful best of 3. But for here, it's a good start for the Sinners. They get to go up to the upper bracket, which gives them the best shot of trying to make a surprise appearance. For Saw, they're going to have to battle back from this point on. Following that, we have Falcons taking on Eclot on Anubis. Falcons managing to barely get a win over the line in overtime 16-13. We're going to have a lot to talk about Falcons once we get deeper into the best of 3 section, possibly in the next video. But for here, the reality is that Simple has looked just okay, but not really showing signs of the Simple of old just yet. Magus continues to be an adequate piece as well. Definitely has its moments of shining, especially on the CT side. But just this team does not look coordinated. This is something we're going to criticize quite heavily in another series, but it looks like a mixed team. It looks like they haven't had enough time to come together and really develop the kind of teamwork and coordination that you need to succeed at this point in Counter-Strike. Comparing this to a team like Wildcard from the Americas RMR, where their system is so tight, so well run, the flash assists, the setups, the utility usage is just excellent. I see almost none of that from the Falcons. Here they're able to get by on Anubis, which is typically a more aggressive, a bit more of a puggy map if you're going to be a little bit less structured, but that always doesn't hold up. Again, more on that in just a minute. But here, they do enough to get over the line against Eclot, who are a team that no one really expects to do anything. For Eclot, though, this definitely feels like a missed opportunity. You had a 27-kill game out of Daitor. You kind of need to capitalize on that. Forzy not much farther behind with 22 kills. Losing in overtime sucks. But, you know, listen, maybe it was the Simple difference. Who knows? Snappy had 23 kills, which doesn't happen hardly ever. So Falcons, for right now, have managed to find a win, something they've struggled to do. We then have Sangal taking on the Rebels. Sangal were a team I was definitely excited to watch throughout this event, specifically just because of Yada and Eclot, looking like these great potential talents coming out of the Turkish scene, and here, they're both leading the pack, helping them to a confident victory on Vertigo 13-8 over the Rebels. A good start to the tournament for them. Kind of an unremarkable game because the Rebels are just not a team that I think anybody's rating, but I'm glad that Sangal didn't stumble thus far. They're off to a strong start. Yada and Eclot both looking good. The rest of the team is just holding it together. They're not really showing any gaps, and it's good to see them get off to a victory. And closing things out for our first round of best one play, we have the team that shall never be named, BB Team, taking on Unity, and this was a 13-4 one-sided stomp for BB Team on Anubis. Kind of just a wholly unremarkable game. Unity are just not a team that anyone's really rating. BB Team are kind of one of those lesser, like top 30-ish teams. Magnoez, Nafani, Chiron, these players can have a lot of upside, but I mean, they're really just, you know, one of those teams on the outside looking in of like the Russia trifecta of power, but they're altogether not a terrible lineup. They're just not really a lineup that I'm going to be expecting to do too much. And against Unity, taking care of work here very quickly, that's what you'd like to see in terms of at least getting off to a hot start. Alright, so that was the first round, and we took some time to establish some narratives and some teams to look forward to. We're going to just run through the scores of the second round of best of ones, so that way we can get through seeding and get to these best of threes to bookend this video. Alright, so in the second round, we had NAVI taking on Sinners, a 13-5 win for NAVI. Not expecting Sinners to do anything against the best team in the world, so a totally expected result on that end. Eclot, I think, got a surprising win over GamerLegion 13-11. GamerLegion are definitely a team I rate much more highly than this Eclot roster. It was a very close game, came down to the last round. GamerLegion just couldn't get over the line. That's alright, they got plenty of time to make do in the best of 3 section. Ideally, the win would have been really nice to help their odds. I mean, obviously they got a bad bracket draw taking Vitality in the first round. Eclot are definitely beatable, but credit to them for pulling out a game in the end. Vitality stomped out BB Team 13-3, nothing to really note there. Fnatic dominated the Rebels 13-3 as well. BlameF looking remarkable, honestly having a great tournament. Mouz destroy Sangal 13-3, that's 3 straight stomps. Again, Sangal are a team of interest, but they really weren't going to do anything against Mouz. We then had Cloud9 take care of work against Nemiga 13-5, and this was a great game out of Heavygon and Axile, really pulling their weight. Icy really didn't have time to do anything. Inferno's not an op-heavy map, so I don't really begrudge him there. But again, Cloud9, I'm betting on them to make a run here. I'm going to keep on hammering that home. Saw make up for a first round disappointment with a 13-8 victory over Unity on Dust 2. Utiris, Story, and Udrix all combining for 19 or 18 kills. They were just humming on this map. Once again, Udrix and Story are just genuinely excellent. Please don't sleep on these guys. And then we have a weird one. Faze versus Falcons went into overtime on Nuke before Faze could pull out the victory. Credit to Faze though, they swept the overtime and didn't waste any time in that regard. But against the Falcons, this game shouldn't have gone to overtime in the first place. Simple only had a ho-hum game and ended up with 19 kills and 19 deaths. Magisk and Dupree kind of rolled back the years, both of them. And then honestly, I think the reason this game ended up so close is that Robson continues his slow start to the tournament. He goes 13 for 21 here, and if it wasn't for Frozen and Rain continuing to be genuinely excellent and Brokey holding his own, this would have been much worse for Faze. At the end of the day, Faze should have taken care of this much cleaner than it had to be, but at least they got the win. Falcons are still struggling to find form. And then in our lower bracket third round, we had Cloud9 destroying Sangal 13-2, Sinners taking care of Eclot 13-8, Saw taking down the Falcons to the shock of nobody 13-5, and Fnatic getting by a close game over BB Team 13-11. The only game of note in this lower bracket, honestly, was Saw taking out Falcons in such dominant fashion. I actually casted this game with my brother on my stream instead of just watching along. We muted the stream and casted the whole thing, and honestly, this was a routinely ugly game out of the Falcons. Their T side was abysmal, their CT side looked absolutely dreadful, Simple was totally missing when 7-14, Madden was the only ray of hope in the darkness. This was a absolute shit show from the Falcons, and Saw, they took advantage. They looked clinical, together, an actual team. Okay, enough of that best of one tomfoolery, let's get to the thing that actually matters, our first set of best of threes. We have 2 advancement matches for our first and second place, going straight to the elimination stage of the major, skipping the opening stage entirely, and we have our first 2 elimination matches, 2 teams trying to stay alive so they aren't eliminated in last place. Starting things off, we have arguably the best game played so far in the major cycle, and that's NAVI taking on Mouz. And coming into this, I was really fearful for Mouz. NAVI pretty much owned this matchup over the last couple of times playing each other, and NAVI looked like they're really strong coming into the tournament to start. Would Mouz be a little bit nervy? Will they come out and play their style? They could definitely take NAVI to task, but it was going to be a come from behind series all the way, at least in my opinion. And starting off, NAVI looked like they were going to be very strong, if not unbeatable. On Mirage, it was a 13-4 stomp. Mouz, they only really looked good in those first couple of rounds on the T side, but as soon as NAVI got the economy established, they just hit a brick wall, and Mouz literally couldn't win a single round out. From 3-4 to 13-4 before you could even blink. And the first place we have to start off is that NAVI, once again, just the wealth of riches in terms of talent on this lineup is so remarkable. Wonderful only had 8 kills, and it didn't look like it mattered one bit because Emma, JL, and even Alexi B were just going insane on the CT side. Emma and JL especially made mid an absolute nightmare. There was nothing for Mouz to even do. One thing I will say that I wasn't a fan of for Mouz throughout this game is that they got shut out of mid so many consecutive times on the T side, but they continued to hammer on it and continued to try. There were rounds where they would lose 2 picks almost immediately, but still try to force through the mid control. Very rarely were Mouz willing to drop back and go for an A execute or a B play, and when they did, the B takes weren't really landing, and honestly, I can't even remember if they took the A side once in the half. They just got behind on momentum and couldn't seem to claw it back. Torzi, Brolin were unable to find impact, Xerxin was getting picked off very early. It was really just Jimfat who was having minor success, but even then, nobody on Mouz ends the game with over a 1 rating. It really was a totally one-sided affair, and considering we were going into Dust 2, the second map of the series, NAVI had been very dominant on Dust 2 over their last couple of tournaments. I really thought we were looking at a 2-0. Which ultimately wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? This is just an advancement game. Mouz weren't worried about elimination, they could still contend to skip the opening stage later on in the bracket if they lost here. But it was really remarkable how Mouz between maps entirely flipped the script and came back and hit NAVI right in the mouth on Dust 2. It was a 13-8 win, and honestly very dominant in their own regard. And now is a good time to sit back and just praise Shuhi, because pretty much no other in-game leader in the world does what he does. Not only is he excellent tactically, arguably one of the very best in the world, but his ability to call his own shot and bust open a round by himself is truly remarkable. The last time we've seen an in-game leader be able to do this to this extent, it honestly reminds me of Fallen circa 2016, but the difference is Shuhi's doing it with a rifle. He's doing it at the head of the pack sometimes, entering on the T side to set up the big guns behind him. On Dust 2, there were rounds where he would just run down mid, and there's nothing you can do to stop him. The CTs are never expecting him to be down mid instantly. Bit hasn't even made it through B doors yet, and there's Shuhi already crossing the CT, gets a pick for free, and at this point NAVI have to freeze. The map has been cut in half, and this allows Mouz to take their time and cut up the map control even further, eventually settling on a late A split where Xerxin gets to pick up Catwalk, and just those 2 picks, even after Shuhi goes down in CT to Bit eventually, force NAVI into immediate save to preserve the economy. But again, no other in-game leader does this. Kerrigan does facilitate on the T side quite a lot, that's very famous to his style, but Kerrigan knows that he's going on a suicide mission, that he's not good enough to get those picks more often than not, but he wants to be the sacrificial piece for somebody like Frozen to come right behind and take that trade and the map control thereafter. Shuhi is doing a very similar thing, but he's able to actually succeed in his aim duels quite often, which is a major advantage in his favor. But it wasn't just all Shuhi. The big thing that went right for Mouz throughout the rest of the series from here is that Torzi remained very impactful, whereas Wonderful was just not really hitting in this series. Here he ends up with 9 kills and 16 deaths, a pretty disastrous scoreline from your Omper on Dust 2 of all maps. Combine that with JL not really able to get activated himself, Emma and Bit were still fantastic as individuals, but with the fact that their 2 other co-stars weren't able to find anything, they couldn't do enough to keep their team in it. Everyone else on Mouz, a total bounce back. The first map, nobody could get above a 1.0 rating. Here, everyone ends with above a 1.3. Just total dominance from the T side allowed them to snowball the momentum into the CT side, and Mouz equalized the series 1-1. And then we roll up to Inferno, which can always be the Achilles heel for NAVI, and here ended up being the case once again. But honestly, what really shines here was Jimfat. We all know Jimfat's been the best anchor all year and one of the most valuable third pieces on any team in the world, but here he shines so much. His ability to anchor the A side on the CT side is just unbelievable. But again, his ability to clutch. It's hard to say who the best clutch player all year was, but JimFat is certainly in that discussion. He had 3 separate clutches on this map that were pivotal for Mouz finding the ability to win this map so dominantly. It was a 13-7 scoreline. He did it on the T side. He had incredible A-holds on the CT side. The only brief window of hope for NAVI was a brief stint towards the start of the second half where they captured the T side pistol round and used that economic advantage to take the first 4 rounds, but Mouz, they very smartly bided their time. The only blip on that radar was losing the first gun round on round 4, but even then they bounced back with a round win right after, and then Jimmy P came to play. He dominated the back half of this game, having huge multi-kills on the A side that NAVI simply couldn't recover from. And unfortunately, this might be the weakness of NAVI on this map, is that Wonderful can't really get activated because it's so un-op friendly, and he's just not that good with a rifle in his hand. Of course, in comparison, Torji still had a great game, so it's not like Wonderful was incapable of doing it with the op, he just has to find his spots more. Emma, even though he's been great routinely throughout this event, was not good here, only having 9 kills. JL and Bit are just super good on Inferno, so if NAVI could figure out a better system, I think they would be one of the best Inferno teams in the world, because you have Bit, who just owns A, owns apartments, and JL, who is equally as good at defending the B site. They just need to figure out something better in terms of the system. They have to get Wonderful more integrated and more activated, and Wonderful himself just needs to be a bit more consistent, and then we could talk about NAVI as one of the greater Inferno teams. But honestly, this was an amazing upset win for Mouz, coming from behind on the first map. They snagged that first place spot in the EU RMR's A, and a guaranteed spot straight into the elimination stage, which is great to see from them. Hopefully they can keep up this performance later on in the main event. Alright, so we're going from a thrilling series between 2 major favorites to one of the most frustrating series between 2 teams nobody honestly cares about. We have Nemiga taking on the Rebels, and I just want to say I feel bad for Moses and Dinko for having to deal with this on the cast, because Anubis went for 5 overtimes, almost 50 rounds, and then after all of that, we still went to double overtime on Ancient before Nemiga managed to end this absolute insanity of a series. In the latter 2 maps of this best of 3, these 2 teams managed to play nearly 90 goddamn rounds of Counter-Strike. This series was almost 5 fucking hours long, and if you're me and you live in the United States, this series went on from like midnight until the start of the next goddamn day. And I don't know what you guys want from me. If I was to actually analyze this series, it would have to be its own 3-hour special, but I'm not going to. Because honestly, nobody cares about these teams. Don't pretend you do in the comment section. I know you're lying. So, I mean, all I will say is that, yeah, it was a crazy kind of series. If you want to go watch the overtimes on Anubis, it was entertaining in the same way that 2 people having a homeless fight in front of the gas station is entertaining. But altogether, you should probably stop that from happening, just on a larger societal level. Rebels are eliminated in last place. Nemiga stay alive for now. And I can't believe these players had to sit through that long of a series. Next. Following the torture, we have a series that could have been much more interesting, but at the end of the day just didn't quite deliver, and that's Vitality taking on Faze. And really that's because Vitality are so goddamn good, and Faze continue to be just not nearly as good as they have been previously throughout this year. The first place I want to start is actually positive for Faze, and that's that one, Kerrigan, despite playing through some very difficult circumstances. If you guys don't know, on Twitter, Kerrigan's brother tragically passed away right before the RMR started. And obviously all of our hearts go out to him. That's a terrible thing to have to deal with under competition level pressure. And the fact that Kerrigan is still playing not only really well as an individual through most of these series, but he's still stoically leading the troops in the same old way is just so admirable. Kerrigan is just one of the nicest guys the community's ever produced. He's always been a consummate professional, and for him to pretty much do what Dupree did back with Astralis and play under these kinds of circumstances is just so commendable. And right behind him, Frozen has been excellent despite Faze's struggles. Frozen honestly being the most consistent part of Faze, which I just don't think anyone would have expected when he was added to this roster. The real problems with Faze, as always, have been Rops and Brokey being so inconsistent for the last few months, and it's really starting to be a problem because Faze, they have moments where you see the tournament form they've had, and part of me does hope that they can find that form in the major because that's typically where they played their best. just right here against Vitality, they are a team that's just so confident in what they are. They know what they need to do. Zaibu looked totally unbothered. He wasn't really needed on Mirage, but he was absolutely dominant on Dust 2. Mezzi's coming back after having his kid be born. You know, congrats to him for that. He hasn't slowed down one bit. And the system around Apex is just really, really good. On paper, this should be a very close and exciting series, but with the current form, Faze just kind of capitulated. It was a 2-0 and quite dominant from the side of Vitality, allowing them to counter second place in this RMR as well as a coveted spot directly into the elimination stage. Faze still have a chance later on to also capture one of those, but thankfully they're still in the hunt. And for our last series of the day, I'm going to keep things brief because the video is already getting pretty long. And to be honest with you, this was a series I didn't catch live because it was at like 3 in the goddamn hell-ass morning. GamerLegion taking on Unity. GamerLegion are a team that many people in my Discord, top link in the description, come hang out, we're pretty excited about. I think that's just because, again, like we talked about, ZTR and Flamus are two very good players on the up and up. And I'm glad they took care of work in this series, winning it 2-1. They got stomped out on the opener on Anubis, but hey, Anubis is such a momentum-based map, that can definitely happen. They fell really short on their T side in the second half, which feels odd to me, but I think on the whole, you play this series over and over again, I think GamerLegion would beat Unity more often than not, so I'm not really going to hold that against them. They were much better on Vertigo and Ancient thereafter. Unity, they're kind of an interesting team. I really liked Mikey throughout this series. I thought Levi had great moments of impact as well. It's just, again, they're so far back in the pack, even in like the tier 3 conversation in the Czech Republic. It's just not a roster I would expect to do anything. GamerLegion have made the major before. These are players that we know about. We know what to expect from them in terms of what they can bring as individuals. And I'm glad they ended up getting the win here to stay alive and not be eliminated in last place. That would have been genuinely disappointing. Alright, there you go. With that, we are now pretty much exactly at the halfway point of the results of the EU RMR. I know this is actually going up on the 3rd day, but hey, scheduling is a bit of a bitch and it's never been my strong suit, but at least it's getting out and I can spend much more time talking about some of the more interesting best of 3s as we close out the tournament in the follow-up videos, so keep an eye out for that. Also, live tonight on my stream, twitch.tv/LionHeartZ2, I'll be co-streaming the rest of those games. Come drop me a follow and let's see how the last of these series shake out and who can swipe up those last few spots on the board. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe as always. Shout out to my channel members Justin, Jesse, Furley, Bubblesj, Milan Berta, and Dr. Cocktor. If you want to support me directly, you can click the link in the description and become a channel member today. It helps out immensely, but at the end of the day, your viewership is enough for me. Once again, come check me out on the co-stream. I'll see you guys soon with another recap. Peace.